do some Dylan Thomas poems, but I'm not going to do Dylan Thomas poems. I've done enough Dylan Thomas. Well, not enough, but at least I need to do something different. So I thought I would tell you the story of getting hitched, or was it stitched, in Wales. This story dates back almost 60 years. We had just arrived in our hotel room on our honeymoon, and while standing in the middle of the bedroom, we could hear every word of the conversation the people next door were having. As the porter put our bags down, I looked at Magdalene. "I don't like this place," she said. We were married on the 27th of February. A strange time of the year to get married, you may think. But people in Britain did not have much money in those days. However, if you married before April 15th, you could claim the extra taxes you had paid while being single for the whole of the previous year. Now, that may sound trivial to you, but it amounted to maybe £100, which was a lot of money in those days. So most working class people try to get married before April 15th to claim back their taxes. And so your church, wedding reception, location, and such like had to be booked well in advance. Even with 18 months reserve notice, we could not be accommodated any later than the end of February, 27th. One of the worst months, weather-wise, of the year. Where to go on our honeymoon on the 27th of February was the question. I took the advice of a friend, Bobby Chicken, who played on my soccer team in Wales. On our honeymoon, we went to Butlins Hotel in Clacton-on-Sea in England and had a great time, he said. Butlins was a company who offered cheap holidays. Their holiday camps were equipped with dormitory-type accommodations, restaurants, pubs, an amusement park, and entertainment venues at seaside locations throughout Britain. They also had a number of hotels like this one we were in, specifically catering to vacationers. So there we were, listening to next door. 8 hours earlier, we had been married at St. Mary's Catholic Church. As I had stood next to my best man, like so many others before me, I went through my moment of panic when hearing the first notes of "Here Comes the Bride." My wife-to-be was 20, I was almost 23. My family were mild Protestants. My wife's family, led by her fierce, 5-foot-tall, 90-year-old grandmother, were devout Catholics. At that time, there were still traces of sectarianism in Britain. My mother was a non-practicing Protestant, although she always claimed that she said her prayers each night. When I told her that we were going to get engaged, she paused before saying, "You know, you will have to get married in a Catholic church, and your children will have to be brought up as Catholics." "It doesn't bother me," I said. After all, this was the early 60s, not the Middle Ages. As for my prospective in-laws' family, there was no doubt where the wedding ceremony would be. Anything other than St. Mary's was a step on the path to hell. You might say ours was a mixed marriage. To prepare me, a person who was considered almost a heathen for this Catholic connection, and after I had pledged that our future children would be brought up in the one and only true faith according to the Pope, I was required to attend 5 30-minute sessions of Catholic indoctrination. We both went along. During our first meeting with the priest, I made the mistake of saying I wasn't sure whether or not God existed. This provoked serious debate and almost 3 months of long theological discussions. The priest, Father O'Donnell, was in his late 30s. He was a friendly man who chain-smoked, a person whom we quickly grew to like, especially when he once declared, "Who am I to try and tell you how to bring up children? I'll never have one." Well into the night, the three of us would embark upon deliberations and debate as we turned the air blue with cigarette smoke, and I tried to outwit the tentacles of Rome. The wedding and reception itself went off almost without a hitch. Almost, I say. Except that the wedding cars got lost on the way to Magdalene's home. Then the ceremony was further delayed when we were told that our priest had died the night before. While my bride waited outside in the wedding car, the church eventually found a replacement priest. Was this God's way of preventing our chain-smoking priest from executing this unholy bond, I wondered? Or was it the cigarettes? Whatever the reason, we were devastated and almost as upsetting. The young substitute priest looked as though he had just been pulled out of bed. His hair was a mess, his glasses were perched lopsided on a thin nose, and as he stuttered, I realized he was more nervous than we were. I glanced down and saw that he was wearing sandals with no socks. He looked and sounded like Rowan Atkinson, the comedian, flubbing his lines while binding us together for the rest of our lives. "Glyn, will you take Magdalene as your husband?" That type of thing. Having driven for 5 hours from Wales across England to Clacton-on-Sea, we walked into the hotel reception area. The first indication that all would not be well was when we passed by the bar. We could see a large group of inebriated people partying, kicking their legs out and weaving between tables in a conga line singing "Hiya, hiya, conga, hiya, hiya, conga," in time to the playing of a small band and a loud man barking into a microphone. From this introduction of a less than romantic hotel, we found ourselves standing in our room where we could hear someone next door strike a match, and the band 3 floors below playing Bloody Murder. I had stayed in a bed and breakfast once or twice, but never a hotel, and did not know what to expect. Our disappointment quickly transformed to despair. "What can I do?" I asked. "I don't know, but I'm definitely not staying here. We have to drive. If we have to, we'll drive back home," she said. Was it there and then, with her no arguments pronouncement, that I realized consultation and joint decision-making would not always be a factor in our marriage? Out into the street we went. We drove around for a while before finding a hotel that looked modern and suitable. By then it was 11 p.m. We signed in at the reception desk, "Mr. and Mrs. Dowden from Wales." "Do you want tea in the morning?" "Yes," I said. "No," she said. "Do you want the morning paper?" "Yes," I said. "No," she said. "Are you just married?" "No," I said. "Yes," she said. And we went to bed. 3 hours into our sleep, I awoke to the sound of the door to our room being opened. The light flashed on, then off. "Sorry," I heard a deep male voice say, and the door closed. For a few seconds I lay there, wondering where I was, momentarily forgetting that we were married. Then I jumped out of bed, opened the door, rushed out naked into the corridor. Left and right, there was no one in sight. "What's happening?" her sleepy voice asked. haven't a clue. Someone came into our room. I locked the door again, propped a chair against the handle, and thought about those movies where visitors arrived in a strange town late at night only to be murdered in a hotel room. The next morning I complained to the person at the front desk. Later that day we were told not to worry. It was one of the staff who suffered from insomnia, and because we were late checking in, must have thought the room was still unoccupied. I didn't buy it, but I let it go. After that, I stuck strands of hair across the door to check whether anyone had come into our room while we were out. However, I need not have bothered with the James Bond routine, because stepping outside the hotel was soon off the agenda. The first day, we ventured to the promenade and looked out at an angry sea, smashing against stone walls and doing its best to shatter the pier. The wind echoed and tore through the streets, which were deserted of people, stray cats and dogs. Large cold raindrops began to fall, and we scurried back to the hotel. At dinner, I ate glazed Welsh duck, something I had never tasted before and which I considered exotic. Have you ever eaten glazed duck? No? You should try. The next day, snow fell, and for the next 3 days, it snowed and snowed and snowed, and the temperature dropped below freezing. We were holed up in the hotel, and I wondered about the sanity of my soccer friend, Bobby Chicken. There is only so much romance that can overcome such conditions. We decided to cut our honeymoon short and return home. By now the snowfall was turning into blizzard proportions, but I was determined, and our car slipped and slithered as we made our way from the east coast of England towards the sanctity of South Wales. More than 3 hours later, we emerged from the grip of the English coast. The snow had subsided to be replaced by grey, slashing rain. Then, fut-fut, the car spluttered to a halt. Fortunately, I always kept a bag of tools in the trunk, along with spare parts, such as electrical contacts, spark plugs and filters. Anyway, my beautiful companion, snugly ensconced in the passenger seat, quite rightly explained in a logical manner that there was no point in both of us getting wet. I pushed the car to the side of the road, cleared the carburetor, filter, checked the gas pump filter, replaced electrical contacts, and yes, the car started. Off we went triumphantly. Me with my hair dripping in soaking wet clothes, smelling of gasoline, while she looked calm and radiant in her tweed honeymoon suit. Just like a photograph in a Vogue magazine, I thought. Then I said to wondering, were these the early mishaps and obstacles sending a marital message?
And I